She goes, and he's telling us what he's doing. He said he can find like a cancer, like a heart disease that may be 10 or 15 years in the future, but he can take it out of the boy now, and he can see if something like that's going to develop. So she's describing all this as Josiah, this 30-year-old male, kind of sitting there going like, wow, this is crazy. So next, he said, I go, what happened next? She goes, well, Jesus, lifted the boy up, took him off his lap, and the boy stood there, and she goes, he looked like he was confused at first, but then all of a sudden he could see, and his eyes were back brown again, like he had pupils and brown eyes, irises, and he didn't seem to be mentally impaired. And I said, what happened then? She said,
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. As always, wonderful to be with you again. Today, I have a really extraordinary man to introduce you to. His name is David Rippy, or Dave. We call him Dave. You like to be called Dave, don't you?
That's perfect, yes.
And he has, fascinating story. So we're going to explore Dave's story and his wisdom. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Well, thanks for having me. I've followed your work, Karen. I watched the Robert Schwartz interview and some other things you've done, and greatly enjoy them.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's nice that you've watched a couple of the shows. A lot of people don't bother. Anyway, that's lovely. Look, remember, if you people watching and listening, if you like the shows and our conversations, to subscribe, hit that bell button, send us a comment or an email if you've got any questions. Now, you've got an amazing story. I'm going to read your bio here. David Rippy is an inspirational author and speaker who seeks to help people live their very best lives. At the age of 25, in the midst of beginning a career at a Fortune 50 company, Dave's life changed dramatically when he had a car accident which left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. Despite this life-altering injury, he formulated a vision for his life and became determined to fulfill his ambitions to become a money manager, and he did. Dave went on to have a long and successful career working at both Merrill Lynch and the Vanguard Group. After achieving his own dreams, Dave wanted to help others to reach their own goals and live their very best life in spite of facing the greatest hardships of their lives. He has written 4 books, and in each of the books he addresses a different facet of existence: the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. In his book, Captain of My Soul, Mastering a Destiny Altered, he introduces the readers to his story of his devastating spinal cord injury and his success in the business world. His second book, Powering Through Paralysis, How to Survive and Thrive with Disability or Disease, he offers concrete guidelines for living a better life, which is geared towards the disabled, but yet strings together pearls of wisdom, providing valuable information and wisdom for everyone. In the next book, The Immortal Soul, The Journey to Enlightenment, he takes the reader on a spiritual odyssey of his own explorations of the afterlife via transcriptions of particularly powerful sessions from his hypnosis practice. And in his 4th book, Meeting Jesus, David breaks new ground, chronicling some of his hypnotherapy sessions, addressing questions like, have you ever wondered where you go when you die? What happens to your departed loved ones? And will you ever see them again? David uses proprietary hypnotic regression techniques. Is that how you say it?
Yes. In other words, it's basically we made them up.
Oh, you made them up. Oh, okay.
Like proprietary, like it's some things I strung together from other people I've watched and listened to and read.
Right. Helping his clients to explore their past lives, soul purpose, and relationships with divine beings. By guiding his clients into a deep superconscious state, some recount meeting Jesus, archangels, ascended masters, and other spirit guides. Journey to Nazareth is where, in a past life, a young man named Josiah One client meets a spiritual teacher named Jesus, followed him from town to town, witnessing the miracles until his final days. Dave continues to spread his message of positivity through his writings and speaking engagements. He still believes that there are many more miracles to come in his life and works toward new goals and aspirations every day. Well, honey one, there isn't a time more needed your message than at the moment, right?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, it's amazing to see how many people are becoming more interested in, what happens to our loved ones when they leave the earth. Will I see them again? I miss them. I can think of them. I can remember them and love them. But, will I see them again? And what happens to us? Is there any place in particular we might go? We've seen the stories and all the various religions. And what I did was try to do a self-exploration beyond kind of what was presented to me as a child growing up, going to a Presbyterian church out in the middle of Indiana and St. Louis. And, they never mentioned anything about reincarnation. And that always intrigued me. I always kind of wondered, did I have another life? Am I more than just what's in front of me? And decided to do a self-exploration. And that's always intrigued me, what's behind the veil. And started having that kind of feeling back when I was not probably about 25 when I got hurt.
So let's go through your journey. It sounds like when you first had the injury, lots of questions, as I could imagine, thinking like, why am I here on earth? Why didn't I die? Why has this happened to me? Why? You've got over the whys. You've sort of said, doesn't matter why, I can succeed no matter what. So you've done the success, and now there are more questions like, is there past lives? Was there a reason this happened to me? Is it so there's been this like constant exploration, which you've turned into a practice, helping others explore their own reasons for being here. So what happened? You're 25. Let's walk through the story.
Well, I had pretty much a standard upper middle class upbringing. We didn't have to work real hard. I did have jobs during the summers, pay for half my college, that kind of deal. It's kind of the deal we worked with my parents. And, I had just a great childhood, grew up, played sports, lived in Pittsburgh, ice skated on Friday and Saturday nights like everybody else. And pretty much nothing out of the ordinary. And, prior to the accident, I didn't have a lot of hospital experience beyond being born and then my tonsils out at the age of 3. So, before that, there's the typical sprains, there was stitches from sports and things like this, but nothing that could have prepared me for what I faced when I broke my neck. And how it happened, basically, we were going down a road, and I just graduated from college. I went to school down at Texas A&M, and took a job with Sun Oil up here back at the time. It was a great job, great benefits, good possible future. And 3 weeks into that job, the car went off the road, and my friend driving hit a dead deer in the road, and bang! Right then was when everything just changed.
So your friend was driving, did you say?
Correct.
And
yes.
Did he die? Did he exit the main?
Oh, no. Fortunately, he did not die.
Okay.
Because, if he did, I wouldn't be here telling the story probably.
Right.
Because I wasn't getting out of the car. It was 3 a.m. in dark woods, so not a car in sight. So, no, he hurt his back a little bit and wrenched it and, cut his face open from hitting the windshield and that kind of thing. But my side of the car got more damaged. Mm-hmm. It had literally smashed in the roof. They had to cut the roof off. Luckily, I didn't have a seatbelt on, which is normally something you'd want to wear. But that was a good reason not to have that, because what happened was the roof came down and crushed right at the headrest. And if I was sitting up, I would have probably been decapitated or, whatever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what happened was we hit the deer, and I must have just slid right back down to my seat, and I slumped all the way down to my knees hit the dash and shattered my right kneecap. And then bang, I was below the seat and couldn't sit back up. And the realization kicked in that, wow, we can't move anything here. This is a serious situation. And, I was pretty calm, though, through the whole thing. I told my friend, I said, look, you got to, I broke my neck. You got to go get help.
So you absolutely knew that? Like, you were conscious?
Well, because I couldn't move. I figured it was a broken neck. I didn't know for a fact because we hit the deer so fast that it wasn't like I remember the slow motion, like snap or whatever, however it works out. But being unable to move, I had enough sense, even though I never had a biology or anatomy class in high school. I had enough sense to say, wow, we're not moving. It must be related to the spinal cord.
Right.
And I didn't know anybody else who was injured either. It's not like I grew up. That's another thing. I didn't grow up with any background with, people in wheelchairs. I was fortunate enough. Nobody was hurting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a wake-up call in that regard.
So when they gave you the news, oh, you're a young 25-year-old boy, what was going through your head?
Well, the first couple of weeks you're thinking, gosh, do I want to live like
Do I want
this?
to
I mean,
live?
this is,
Yeah.
well, I was very athletic.
Yeah.
And I didn't go through this, I think everybody's going to go through some type of a period where they're not real happy with their current situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very athletic. I 5-speed sports car. I water skied all the time
Yeah.
on weekends, and playing championship level racquetball, and all of a sudden I can't move. Plus I was well built because I was working out, and also you see your body melting in the bed, you can't move. So that's enough to make anybody at that age, I would think, to say, they're not going to look at it like some super evolved, like maybe the Dalai Lama at age of 5 going, okay, this is my new challenge. I mean, you don't know what the heck it is. It's so surreal. You're in pain. There's a lot of pain involved. Probably what helped was that I had strong and loving parents and family. I have a lot of support in that regard. So they're, of course, wanting to come in and visit, even though I'm feeling pretty not real happy with the whole situation. So I'd say there was probably moments of sadness probably for the first couple of weeks. And then after that, and I talk about it in the book, it's kind of wild. I've never really, prior to this time, I never meditated really. I never, I was just always on the go, very athletic, always, full energy and all that stuff. So I really never took the time to slow down. So now all of a sudden you're faced with where you can't move. Mm-hmm. So there's these periods of time going by. And for some reason, one night I talk about in the book, I don't want to waste a lot of time on it because it's really kind of interesting. It's a story that should be read, I think, is that my temperature was spiking every night. They would go up to 104 to 105. And I couldn't control them. It was just something that had to do with the spinal cord injury that caused this. And then the nurses would come in and they would pack like ice bags all around my body, like 25 at a time. Mm. Then they would lay an ice blanket on top of that to try to bring my temperature down from 104 down to about 98.6 or somewhere in that neighborhood. So I was melting the ice bags, just something happens. And I was hallucinating as a result of the fever, wow. Sleep deprivation, the whole 9 yards. So one night, why it popped in my head, I think I had divine help with this. Mm-hmm. I visualized a large map of the United States. And I pictured in my mind that was spinning like I was on a lathe. I felt like I was on a lathe or shooting off into space. That's how fast my mind was spinning. So for some reason, I pictured an old steam train going from Philadelphia, I live in the suburbs, all the way out to San Francisco. So I had to go all the way across the country. So I could see myself, and of course, you're like with a fever, you're kind of this non-sleeping, hot state anyway. So it was kind of bizarre, but I talk about in the book how I saw myself like in the train. I was driving the train. And the goal was to slow it down enough to where I get my mind under control. Wow. So I saw it blazing out of Philadelphia. It was like a rocket sled on wheels. And it was going so fast because I noticed after a little bit, my mind was matching the speed of the wheels. So I knew if I just slow those wheels down, it would slow my mind down also. So that was kind of a strange exercise, but I could see this train blazing across the map through Ohio, through this. And I could see myself looking down and seeing this large map. And then I would find myself inside the train, and I was the only guy on the train. I was a conductor. So I wanted to slow that thing down before I got into San Francisco, because I'd been to Frisco. I'd been out there 2 years earlier working on an oil tanker and having a ball, running all over California at the time in between college semesters. So I'd picked that destination because I'd been there, and it was on the other side of the country. And I knew I needed a heck of a lot of time to get this done because it was just something that I had no control of. So I was literally hallucinating to the point where you just kind of lose control of it after a while. So what happened was, which was really wild, was I started slowing the train down slower and slower, and feeling my mind starting to slow down with the train. And right before I got to the station in Frisco, I kind of, I talk about in the book, I put an ex-girlfriend in the picture, and she was like waving to me in slow motion. I thought that would help slow my mind down a little bit. So the train drifted right outside of the station, about 50 yards past. I ran back, hugged her, and bang, the image just ended right there. And after that moment of using that creative imagery, I never ever hallucinated again while I was in the hospital the entire time. So that one thing got my mind back. And after that, I made massive improvements and I got out of the hospital pretty quick, a lot faster than I would have been if I didn't somehow come up with some creative imagery just out of the blue. It was almost like it was like planted in my head or something. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, there you are. You can't use your body, so it's just you and your mind. I think I read in the Michael Newton books, and you'll know this because you're well read. I think it was his books years ago. That oh gee, I can't remember, but there was a young girl that fell off a cart. I think it was a past life in one of his books that fell off a cart and she became a cripple. And then he was reviewing why that happened, and it was because her soul wanted to explore the mind and the creativity of the mind, and that if she had the working of her body, she would have been out exercising and skipping and doing all sorts of things and not doing what her soul wanted her to do. And she became an amazing writer and poet. And is that the conclusion that you came to as well with your?
Well, I don't remember that particular story because he had so many. Like I said, I had.
It might not have been Michael Newton. It might have been another book, but yeah, that was someone.
But that makes sense. I mean, he talked about others to where, you know, we come down and take life challenges. I mean, in the Immortal Soul and Meeting Jesus books I've written, I've found that, you know, a lot of people, everyone, kind of signs a soul contract before they come down. And I'm not here to rehash, you know, things we've learned and Michael did, which some people I'm sure can do. But the reality is when, you know, when you bring these people into trance, and I did follow some of Newton's methods to get to the past lives and get to life after lives. And then we took it other stages, something Newton was starting to get into, and that's where you look for traumas in this life. And how do they link, or do they link to a past life? That's what I found pretty fascinating too. In other words, taking a person through a past life regression, taking them on to the other side, you know, find out their soul color, how evolved are they. Then we go from there to, you know, explore how they did on their lessons in that particular life. And then what's interesting from there, we kind of take it a little deeper. And usually prior to a session, I'll ask them, you know, do you have any pain? Do you have any pain that really can't be discovered by conventional methods? They can't find a trace or why it's there. One interesting person, if you want to hear about it real quick, I can tell you it's about, I hypnotized a girl. She's a occupational therapist, about 30 years old, gets into Reiki and shamanism. So she was a neat person to hypnotize. She's actually, I have a couple of stories on her, actually one in the book. It's pretty good. And she had this unpained, sharp girl and said, yeah, I had this sciatic nerve pain in my left hip, and I've never really been able to determine, you know, the doctors can't tell me. I didn't play sports in high school. You know, I never injured it. There's really nothing I can trace. And the doctors can't figure it out. I've had MRIs, I've done tests, I've done this, but it hurts. And I know it's there. It's nagging me all the time. I can't stand it. So that was one thing she had. And then she also had a jaw, but she doesn't grind her teeth. She doesn't have TMJ. But she's telling me she has this constant ligament pain in her jaw, and she's been to specialists and dentists all her life. And they really can say, you know what, your jaw should be fine. So they're not sure why the heck it hurts. But as we explored a couple of past lives with her, what she found was, I said, I took a different tack and said, let's go to the source of that pain on your sciatic nerve, and why does it hurt? And then bang, next thing you know, she's telling me about a life as a Revolutionary War soldier. And she was out there on the field, and they got shot in the leg with a 50 caliber, musket ball. So it knocked her, just knocked her down. She bled to death. I mean, it blows your leg off pretty much if you hit with something that a 50 caliber bullet. Then I said, okay, well, that's, we know it is. What happens is it's like watching a movie, a traumatic movie. So you're literally watching a traumatic movie of the experience you had that caused that pain. So if you listen to that thing 10 times, it's gonna be like watching, watching Scarface. It's not gonna have, or Friday the 13th with Freddy Krueger. It's not gonna have the same impact it did the first time you saw it. And the more you see it, it starts to leave the subconscious. And then what I found is you can say it's all fading away. It's only a past life. And bang, they get up, and you'd be surprised. The pain, pretty much, the more they listen, you much almost erase it.
Dissipates. It's so interesting that you say that. I had a friend who's now left her body. She was born thalidomide affected, so she was quite internally deformed as well as externally deformed. And we did some personal growth courses together, and one of the exercises was to tell your story, and over and over and over and over again. And she's like, she's got this big story, right? You know, she's like, I'm born deformed, and, you know, no one's going to love me because I'm sick and deformed, and I'll probably die tomorrow. The doctors are always killing her off. And it was just so funny as she's telling her story. She's like, oh God, I'm over it. I'm seeing like this crap, you know, like it just becomes this story that you just don't want to repeat anymore. And there's just something profound.
That's what I did.
Yeah, it was an interesting exercise, and just becomes like a story, not, and there's no emotional charge to it anymore. Like when you first tell it, there's like crying and oh, then you tell it again, and there's a little bit of emotional charge, and then you tell it again and again, and it's like, oh God, I'm over it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I never thought of that, and that's something that does work. And whether you're dealing with a past life or a current life, and it's something that that's interesting.
Well, let's get back to your story. So here you are, 25. You're learning to get a hold of this mind of yours, like you're learning to control it, to learning to control your, even we were talking about your autonomic nervous system, because the sweating was an automatic thing. And yeah, like there are lots of people, we were discussing that on another show, that talk about how to do that. Like there's the Wim Hof method, you know, you get in ice cold water and then you control the temperature of your body. I'll tell you what, menopausal women need to know how to control their temperature.
Unfortunately, I don't have these temperature issues. Fortunately, I don't. So yeah. So anyway, here we are, 25. We got out of the hospital, went through the rehabs. They got my body stabilized to where, you know, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I can stay out 95-degree weather. I can stay out 25-degree weather. It doesn't bother me. Like I knew other people that come out of the hospital with me who, you know, were very sensitive to temperature fluctuations. They would have to wear sweatshirts, be like 75, and I'm going, wow, aren't you dying in that? So we were very fortunate in a lot of ways. So we're pretty much as healthy as you could possibly be with this type of injury. The only thing is we don't move now, but you know, health-wise, you know, I don't get sick, I don't get the flu. So I've learned, and I also wrote about, I'm not here to plug the books, but apparently through Paralysis, I did a whole chapter on health and wellness for people that are disabled, for people that have diseases, for people that take care of people with these problems, whether it's a parent with dementia or it's a child with spinal bifida. So what I've done is I've kind of laid out what I learned over the course of my injury of how to not get sick, how to stay healthy, how not to get ever. I've never had the flu. I don't get sick. I started this regimen, and I talk about a little bit how I did it. This regimen back in 2003 and kept, not to sound like a nerd or anything, but kept tracking my blood results all the way up. And then I'd add other things, I have vitamin D, C, B, magnesium, zinc, testosterone, all these DHEA, all these additional tests. So I also started exploring what I would take me to be healthy. And I knew that I couldn't have a career in a fast-paced brokerage environment working on the penthouse floor of Merrill Lynch in Center City, Philadelphia for 4 years and talk to people about stocks and bonds if I missed work. There's no paid holidays as a broker. There's no vacation days. So every day you go in, it's a question whether you're going to make money or not for you and your client. And that's why I knew I had to stay healthy. I couldn't miss work. So I never missed work very much. It was very rare, which is rare for this injury, to put it mildly.
So how long did it take you to go from 25 in the hospital contemplating your life to being a successful broker? How many years?
About a year. Let's say a year and a half.
I have to explain this to people that are listening that can't see you, that you're doing this without being able to move from the neck down. So you can't move your hands. So this,
they can't see me on the tape, I guess, right? It's just you. They can't see me. Is that?
No, this goes out on audio podcasts as well as video and audio podcasts as well as YouTube. So there are lots of people that just listen and don't watch.
Just the podcast. They don't watch the YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. It was after I got hurt that I realized there was more to being healthy and staying out of the hospital. And that involved, thinking about respiratory issues, thinking about, any type of health issue that you can think of, because it's a little harder for somebody in a wheelchair as it would be for a normal person walking and running around. So what we learned, and we said, we're sitting at home for 6 months. And, like I said, I wasn't real upset except for a couple of weeks on average. And I set goals. And I think what really helped me a lot was I'm a competitive person by nature. And I was competitive only basically in sports. And I was gifted enough. My parents, fortunately, they're really, really smart. And, my grandma was too, and my grandparents. So what I was kind of, I could just kind of get through school, really wasn't hard, but I didn't really try either. I didn't really try it after I got hurt. And once I couldn't be competitive physically, then I decided, I want to be competitive in something. So all I could do was be competitive mentally. So we started getting to the point where it was pretty, I don't know, it was pretty bad, I guess. I go into a classroom and kind of look around at who's in the class, not knowing any of them. And I said, I would just to myself, what's it going to take for me to get the highest grade in this class? I was just kind of glance around. I mean, I was like that. So then I just started doing very well in those areas, and then thought, I get bored easy. And a lot of times with this type of injury, they try to push you initially into like computer work or computer coding. And, I had a couple of computer classes in college, and I said, wow, I'll die of boredom if I end up doing this. I know some people love coding and stuff, but I didn't really particularly enjoy it. It wasn't that interesting to me. So, I got hurt and I came home. I said, I knew what I couldn't do. I couldn't do a lot of things. I thought, what can I do? I got a Bachelor of Science in Economics. I'm 25. I don't have a lot of good work experience. It's competitive as hell out there, and I'm going to be competing from, paralyzed. So what I did was I decided I want to be a stockbroker because I thought that would be interesting. Managing money, kind of watching the markets. And it really keeps you up on a lot of cool stuff. I mean, you're well aware of what's going on around the world because you have to buy stocks in other countries and things like that. You learn a lot about economics, which I kind of used my degree. I never knew I'd be using my degree personally. So you learn a lot. You have to follow economics because everything's economics. And, from there, you just learn a lot of things in history and all that cool stuff, going back to the early days of the markets up to modern day. But the neatest thing is putting your thoughts and what you put together is your advice, and sharing that with clients. And that's pretty competitive.
When I'm suspecting that the whole time that you're being competitive and enjoying that whole mental game and money market game that we can get really swept up in, there's still an underlying questions there. Like it's when did the questions get loud enough to stop wanting to make money and to wanting to explore, become a hypnotherapist and explore spirituality? When did that start? Like, what was happening?
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that because after a while, money management is okay. It's fun. I mean, it's fun for a while. So what I did was, to answer your question, we just kind of, throughout all the years since I was hurt, I had more interest I had to know about the markets because you have to deal with clients and they have a lot of money and they expect you to know something. So I obviously know that field. But I made a decision to leave my career about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And give up a pretty decent job that was there, and it was I had good hours. It was like whatever hours I wanted to make, really. A lot of vacation time, bonuses, all this cool stuff. But it just wasn't enough at the time. And during that time when I first got hurt, I did a couple of past life regressions about age 26, I think.
Okay.
And so I did those first myself because I want to explore myself.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hypnotizing people randomly for, whatever reason. So what I did was I did a couple past life regressions. I, enjoyed reading more about, I did my homework though. I had to stay up on finance in the world, obviously. But my fun reading was more of the Edgar Cayce type books, and Dolores Cannon's, Dr. Moody, that kind of deal.
Dr. Moody, Dr. Weiss, yes, Dr. Newton. You've
there's a
read
lot
them all. Yeah. And they're all
I don't know if I read them all, but we read quite a few.
I love the way that you say we. When you
it is interesting. My mother corrects me on that all the time.
No, I wouldn't correct you. The Queen says we because she says God and I, the Queen. But then it's like it's in normal society, it's like only the Queen can say we because it's her and God. Whereas, like, why can't it be all of us and God? Because we're multi-dimensional beings, so we are more than one person. We are a we. We are a spiritual.
That's interesting. I never knew that about the Queen either. I had no idea of that, and it's something I've done for a very long time. And some of it could stem from having people help me. I can't say I wash the van, but if I'm providing valuable advice while they do it, it could be we wash the van.
Yeah.
Right? People don't build their own buildings.
Well, let's explore some of your past lives, because in the book, which one did I read? Was it The Immortal Soul? You explore some of your past lives in that book. Do you want to share some of them? And
Yeah, I can tell you, they're not super exciting. It's not like we had some life in that particular life under Ramses II or something. But what I do find is though that you find that there are similarities or commonalities in the life we're in now, and it's amazing how a lot of those roots can be found in other past lives. And couple for me, for instance, I found my career. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I was in my first past life, I saw myself as an orphan. Thought I came back from New York City. Maybe it was like 1850, something like that. Or 1840. I saw myself tilling soil outside of Lexington, Kentucky, probably around 1860, and I knew I went to California to look for gold. And that was important to me to have, maybe a fast hit, not work hard for all the money and that kind of deal. So I went out, I didn't find gold. And it's funny, the hypnotherapist goes, well, there's one thing in that life that you could change. What would that be? And I said, to find the gold. It was to be a nicer person. It wasn't like, well, I would have been more patient. It was nothing altruistic. It was more of that. And what's kind of neat about that is that I found myself, never really wanted to work a lot. I mean, I just found myself saying, I don't mind working because obviously I put the hours in at both companies. But, there's also that possibility of doing very well in the stock market too, if you pick the right stock. So it's not much different than going in mining because there's no other field that really allows that opportunity when you get right down to it. So that got my interest.
okay, so it's not like I wanted to be a nice person. I just wanted to find the gold. I think that's really interesting.
Well, I was 26-year-old mentality at the time, right?
Well, it's also fascinating that because there was a couple of other past lives that you explored too. It feels like they're all coming together, and the achievements that weren't achieved are sort of being achieved in this life. One of them being a nice person. I wonder who Dave Rippy would be if you never had the accident. You'd be
Well, I know what Dave Rippy would have been. I already saw that very clearly.
Tell us.
Well, see, I was like I said, I was tall and strong. I pretty much got to do whatever I wanted. I was fairly, I don't know, I guess I was fairly, I'm not gonna say egotistical, but I would think some people thought I was proud of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 6'2", walking around 190, benching over 300 pounds, and decent looking at the time. And
for people that can't see him, he's drop dead gorgeous. Yeah, go on.
well, no, I mean, it was just that it was an easy life. I grew up, I got through college, I didn't try hard, got a good job when I got out. So I really was kind of gifted in a lot of different ways, but more, but I was not very deep, I don't think. I mean, I wasn't stupid, I could pass tests and all that stuff, but, I really didn't have time at that age of 25 or even before that, say call it 15 to 25, whatever. The interests weren't in Plato. It was not in discovering about past lives. I didn't know if that was possible. Like I said, I went up through church, Presbyterian, didn't realize that reincarnation was in the Bible. I didn't find that out till later. And, just things took life just like anybody else. I was competitive and, went after it and enjoyed it. And then after I had a couple of past life regressions, then I started delving more and more into that. And as my finance career went on, kept reading more the other stuff. Because pretty much after a while, I had pretty much had it wired as far as, what I really need to know in finance. I could watch, for instance, CNN for half an hour in the morning and pretty much know what's going on all day. Whereas before you're reading Barron's and Business Week and Fortune and, trying to learn because you're young and you don't know much.
So let me ask you this, as I'm experiencing you, you have such a powerful mind. It's like, whoa, it sort of blows me over. And it, because I work as a psychic medium and as an empath, it sort of blows me out of the water, your mind. Woo. And how do you quieten your mind today? How do you sort of find that still point in the middle of the busyness?
First, I want to say, if my parents ever listen to this, when you say such a powerful mind, they're going to go, wait a minute, that's not the kid we knew, because it's just different. We've changed a lot since the accident. And the way we found it quiet is, like I said, I didn't have any meditative practices when I came out. My first exposure to that was the hospital, getting over my hallucinations, going, wow, this worked. I'm not hallucinating, and look at me improve. And how did that, that was pretty cool. So that kind of stuck in my head too. After reading some Newton, I didn't discover Newton until about 6 years ago, actually. You know, Casey Mosley, you know, these kind of things. And, you know, it's funny. I mean, I just had a natural gift, you know, to hypnotize people. So my first exposure to that, you know, so I started slipping into this, you know, more of the spiritual realm. You know, I wasn't a spiritual person per se, but I'd have people that I came across my path that were, you know, very gifted. Okay. The other thing I did was, out of the exploration of myself and things like that, is I started seeking out what I considered some of the best psychics in the world. So I started talking to, you know, some of the names you probably knew at the time: Michelle White Dove, Livingston. You know, there's Allison the Rock Girl. There's a bunch of them, and started reaching out to some of them. I kind of would find out more about myself. So I want to trace back what lives I've had. You know, why do I have certain abilities maybe in this life, and why do I like certain things? Why do I feel like I've known this person, this girl before? Things like that. So I started reaching out to what I consider kind of the modern day oracles, and learned a lot from them. And, you know, it was pretty scientific how we went about it. We weren't totally scientific, but pretty close. Like, what do you see? And then they would recount very similar stories that I heard from a top psychic already. So after about the fourth or fifth top psychic, it started developing a pattern for me to kind of piece these lives together, the names, the dates, where I was located, things like that. So I pieced together about 35 lives that I found pretty interesting. And a lot of it, you know, some of them were just your standard lives, and other lives were, you know, fairly neat.
Some of them were standard and some of them were neat.
Well, neat, like, you know, just with people you would recognize today.
Right. And with all the lives that you've been made privy to, have they been in a sort of reasonable, like a past that was not too long ago? Or have they been thousands of years ago, or hundreds of thousands of years ago? Or
that was that. My sister told me not to get too out there on the show, but no, a lot. I had one of the first ones, Michelle Livingston, and she lives out here. I think she's very good. She's toured with James Von Prague and stuff, and some other ones. I mean, some people have different opinions of her. I think she's great because what she's confirmed from others have confirmed was pretty impressive. And, you know, one of the first was, you know, they tell me you've had star lives, and do you want to look at those? And, you know, I'm thinking, really? Okay, sure, go ahead. You know, it's kind of new. This was probably back in 2012 when I started this journey on getting past life stuff. And she goes, yeah, and they're showing me a picture out in space, and the Earth isn't here yet. So do you want to go back farther? So we went, you know, different planetary stuff, and, you know, pretty darn far back. I mean, way before the universe, way back when. So that kind of thing.
well, absolutely. I think we've all had star lives, Dave. I think that there's probably not a being on the planet that hasn't. I don't think anyone comes to Earth and only comes to Earth. I think Earth is one of the hardest schools. So I think that pretty much, if there is linear time, because there's no linear time from that perspective, I think pretty much most of us have easier lives before we even attempt to come to Earth. You know, like, so those easier lives.
I know you're right. Yeah, it could be some middle world, perhaps. It could be just,
well, other planets, yeah, star lives, if you like to, where
right.
Contrast isn't as polarized, you know, where the contrast in density isn't as vast, and so we kind of play with energy in a smaller way. We don't have this variety of frequency that we play with here on Earth. So yeah, I think we've all had stuff.
Yeah, it could be a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I think everybody's had stories. Just a question of how far back you go in these lives. That's the key. I find the more lives, it's not necessarily you're going to pass every chakra color at all, but I think the more lives you have, and the older your soul is, you know, the more experience you're going to have overall.
Well, definitely, yeah. There's a lot more adventurous soul. You know, there's different levels of adventure. And definitely when you come into contrast and like becoming paralyzed, you're a courageous, adventurous soul, I would say. That's like, yep, I'm up for that.
Well,
Give me some.
Yeah, it wasn't something I would never have signed up for it. At least I didn't think I did.
You didn't think you did. Yeah.
You find out later you have more of a say in it than you realize. And, you know, about the lessons we come down for. And, you know, it's interesting about, and it's really easy to see who's in my life now, that, you know, it's like, you know, this is the role I took. I'm going to be the guy in the wheelchair. my parents are in his life. I knew them in 4 other lives. My sister, I've known in many, many lives. And, she's been very supportive and helpful. And, you take a tough life. Not that this happens in every case, because a lot of people have very difficult lives without good support. But I kind of knew that ahead of time, that said, hey, okay, well, I'll take that. But, I'd like to have Melinda here as my support, as my sister, my life.
Absolutely. It's interesting.
And my parents.
It's interesting that you say that. My girlfriend that I spoke about that was born thalidomide affected, she had a sister who was also one of my best friends, a younger sister. That was her support. And interestingly enough, we had a discussion after Nikki died at 40 from complications from her eternally sick life, and her sister felt kind of free that she didn't have this responsibility anymore to sort of always be there to look after her. But then she died a couple of years later, which really upset me, because she didn't fulfill all those dreams that she said she wanted, to get married and have babies and all that sort of stuff that we think we want. And then I realized that they had this sacred contract to be here. She was kind of her support person. And once that she was off the planet, she played for about 4 or 5 years afterwards, and her career was really getting good and had lots of tortured love affairs and all that sort of thing, broken hearts. But then she was out of here. So it's interesting. All right, back to your story.
Well, I can tell us one last fast thing concerning it. I mentioned my parents, my sister. They've been one of my brothers as well. And my niece and nephews are really, really good people too. What I would say, though, is the assistance I've had.
Yeah.
Okay, the strong help I've had,
Yeah.
where they have come into my lives at certain times where they were very needed, and how they filled that role. And I've been very blessed to have some amazing assistants that decided to have a piece of this script for him.
Yeah. So how long have you been a hypnotherapist?
An official hypnotherapist, or one that's been doing hypnotherapy without a license? But interesting about Pennsylvania, they don't require any licenses or anything like that. I mean, there's very few states that do, actually.
Right.
And what's interesting, the hypnosis has been around with the AMA since early 1950s. And there's only been one, I'm not going down this civil trail or whatever, but there's only been one lawsuit ever filed against a hypnotist all through this history. Which is kind of cool, but I've been doing hypnosis for probably 12 years, roughly.
Right. Yeah.
And I've been a certified hypnotherapist for about a year now.
Okay. Yeah. It's been a long journey. Look, it would have been a big decision to give up the big money career to become a hypnotherapist.
I'm not charging for my service at this point. I mean, all the people I regress are. Have been people that have come to me, whether it's with pain, where they just want to explore past life, and read some and thought it was cool and knew somebody I know and that kind of deal. So I don't charge for the guided meditation. I have about 14 of them on my website, which will help for anything from chronic pain, insomnia, to PTSD, to cramps. I mean, you name it. It's there's about 14 of them, pretty broad based. And the only thing that if somebody wants to buy a book or get a Kindle for $7.99, that's as far as we go. So I've been doing mostly a lot of all free work, basically.
Yep, I hear. I'm doing my free work right now. Okay, let's explore let's explore the last book. That to me sounds like a really interesting one for me personally. They all sound interesting. Obviously, a lot of people are going through diversity at the moment, or hard times at the moment. So, you're probably in that book powering through paralysis, even though it's like survival for disability and disease. It could probably lots of guidelines for people who feel like they need to think in better ways and power through what we're going through. But this one with Jesus, meeting Jesus, let's talk about that. Who was the person that was, let's explore that person that was meeting Jesus.
Well, what I did was, meeting Jesus was a follow-up to the Immortal Soul. Well, then we kind of thought after this book, we had some interesting things going on. They talk about the age of Aquarius and why we're here now. So some people had some really amazing insights into the future of humanity, which is pretty cool. And follow-up was with meeting Jesus. The reason we did that was we were fortunate enough to meet several clients that knew Jesus back in Nazareth. And that was just kind of a mind-blowing type experience to have somebody named, a 29-year-old female in tears, also in healthcare, a whole different person than what I described earlier with the sciatic nerve pain. And, we brought her to a deep, deep trance. And I said, do you tell me what you see? And she goes, I see like mud brick buildings. They're not very well deformed. They're making these things out of the local earth, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, really? Where is this? Oh, somewhere in the Middle East, like this. I'm like, can you give us the name of a town? And she goes, Nazareth. And I go, what was that town? Are you sure about this? She goes, yes, Nazareth, very, very emphatically. And I go, do you know your name? And she goes, Josiah. So she figured out her name too. And next thing you know, I go, I'm thinking Nazareth, we got to ask the question. Did you know Jesus when you were there? Because you time frames, you just don't know. And she goes, I didn't discover him until he was about 30. And I go, okay, can you tell me a little bit about that? And she goes, I met him when I was about 30 myself. I was about 6 months younger than him. And I go, really? So did you follow him around? Did you witness anything? Then she goes into these descriptions of some of the miracles he did. And these are ones I've seen in the Bible. One was about curing blindness, but not any detail. So next thing I know, she's describing how he takes a blind 4-year-old onto his lap in front of this crowd and not hypnotizes, but runs his hand up and down his body. And he's telling her, she's like watching this. And Jesus is saying, what I can do is I can locate where the negative energy is. I can take it right out of him. And his eyes were rolled back in his head. He was mentally impaired. So I go, well, what does the boy's eyes look like? She goes, they're just white. I don't see any eyes, no pupils. So she described what the boy looks like as well. And she goes, Jesus is putting his, hand in the air, and he's scanning his hand over. He's saying some prayers or something. And he's telling us what he's doing. He said he can find like a cancer, like a heart disease. It may be 10 or 15 years in the future, but he can take it out of the boy now. And he can see if something like that's going to develop. So she's describing all this as Josiah, this 30-year-old male, kind of sitting there going like, wow, this is crazy. So next, he said, I go, what happened next? She goes, well, Jesus, lifted the boy up, took him off his lap, and the boy stood there. And she goes, he looked like he was confused at first, but then all of a sudden he could see, and his eyes were back brown again, like he had pupils and brown eyes, irises. And he didn't seem to be mentally impaired. And I said, what happened then? She said the crowd started coming in really close and were trying to touch him to see how the hell Jesus cured this boy in her village. And then other people grabbed the boy and got him out of the way because they were afraid he was going to get smushed, is what she said. She said people were crowding around wanting to see the miracle, to touch him and see how this happened. So she described that. And probably one of the a couple other amazing stories was I had her back for another session. I just, this is the kind of thing you just have so much fun with.
Yeah.
So, and she knew him for a while, followed him around, saw when he was on the cross. I mean, there's really some sad times as well. But one of the most interesting things was the river that was outside of Nazareth, the one right next to Nazareth, but it was where they got their water and they were fishing, and that river was their survival. Without that river, they would have died. So what she said was the river became impure. There was people dumping stuff in it, and it just got nasty and all this. The fish were dying, so they didn't have anything to eat really out there in the middle of nowhere. She described how he went down to the river with a staff, and he would put the staff in the water, and she goes, I could see electrical vibrations come up. They were running from one side of the shore to the other, back and forth like this. And I go, well, how long did he do this for? And she goes, he did it for 6 weeks. I go, wow, it took him that long to do it. And he made the water pure again. The fish came back and everybody's happy. I go, well, what'd they do? I go, did they go down to the river and say, hey, Jesus, how's that coming? How's it going? He goes, oh, no. They were very respectful, and they would just stand back at a distance and just watch him. He was very focused and did not want to be disturbed. We all knew that. So it's pretty crazy to hear somebody recount how they actually talked to Jesus. And she said him and I became good friends. And he goes, I was really upset. I didn't know if life was worth living. I can imagine being in Nazareth in about, 0 AD, what life, or 30 AD, what life was like back then. So, he said there's like much to live for. There was not any marriaging possibilities. Everybody's poor as dirt, and just live out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's just horrible. And how these would get, she said he would sit in front of me, and we'd be in a circle, and other times there'd be more people. And he put his hand up, he put his other hand in front of my heart, and I would feel like this warm energy coming into my body, which would totally relax me. So she described all that stuff too, and it was how he would disappear. And what happens, he goes, I go, did you ever see him doing like levitate or make wine? She goes, no, I never saw him do that. But I did see him do something pretty neat. And I go, what's that? He goes, he would be walking in front of us and he would just disappear. Like he'd gone. And they said they would run over to where he disappeared to and put their hands there to see if there's like some magic or, how is this working? And described how they would feel tingles in her fingertips. And then all of a sudden it would dissipate. And they go, they asked where he was going. And I go, well, where's he going? He said to see my father. So it almost brings tears to your eyes when you read these kind of stories. And I had other ones that were in a scene that helped write the Book of Thomas. That's another story in there. That was a pretty amazing story. Now, I think I might have had a slight advantage to the people I regressed for this book compared to the other book. And what I did was I specifically went out and looked for people that were psychics. They were into Reiki masters. They were into healings. They were into, compassion. And most of them were healthcare workers that do, make money. And they were into shamanism, animals, nature. None of them were into politics, and none of them were religious. Well, none of them were religious either. They were all spiritual. They'd grown up in this church. So and that's how it worked.
Let me ask you, when you hear stories like that, miraculous healings, do you ever wonder if it can happen to you, and would you want it to happen to you?
What's that?
Have a miraculous healing on your body.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think I'll be in this wheelchair forever. I'm convinced of that.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been pretty much told that, I think, over and over by higher beings than us that, through meditative journeys and, we do all sorts of neat stuff. And a lot of psychics said, bang, I can name lots of top ones that said, yeah, you're going to get out. It's already been written and there's a reason for that, and et cetera, et cetera.
So is that the goal now with your life, to sort of discover the consciousness, the frequency, the ability to transform matter, like transform the physical molecules, the physical body?
Well, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, you can do all sorts of visualizations, and everything's on a timeline pretty much. And I think this was delayed for me, I think. And I did find that out. And there's reasons for delaying timelines and when certain events look to take place. And it has to line up in certain ways. And it's beyond me. And, it also, as you know, is your other side, your divine self is already on the other side anyway. And, they can change things that affect you down here as well, which you're not aware of unless you learn about it.
So do you connect with that aspect of you that is like maybe in an astral form, that's not in a physical form, that is unrestricted? Do you connect with that part of you? Do you have like dreams or memories of you?
Well, I've had the ability, I've had psychics tell me this, to astrally project.
Right.
Okay. So we've been doing that.
Yeah.
Pretty right.
Yeah.
And it sounds a little out there, but on different dimensional levels.
Not on my show, it doesn't, Dave.
Right. Well, I think we're all capable of that, but it takes a while to get to the stage to where you can quiet your mind enough to where, one time you just might break through something kind of like what Neo faced in the Matrix, when you just see him kind of go into that other world, that other virtual reality. And I find it's kind of similar to that. It's almost like cellophane. It's almost like a very thin layer to get through. And, that could be a whole other show about, learn that. But when you have an injury like mine and a lot of other injuries, you have time to yourself.
Yeah.
So you learn patience.
Yeah.
That's something you do learn.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just a question, what do you want to do? You want to sit there and fret about why I'm hurt and why I'm this and then yet, and I tell other people this too, like instead of setting that snooze alarm for 15 minutes, take that time where you're in this theta state anyway. You're just coming out of a deep sleep, a delta stage. You're going into theta. You're waking up. Take that 15 minutes at night or in the morning and just allow yourself to relax. And I started doing it just by separating myself. I kind of visualize myself, look down at myself.
Yeah.
And that kind of started the whole thing, was kind of completing I'm not going to say completing your soul, but having the ability of the soul to detach without you being asleep and subconscious and not being aware of that. Because we all travel at night. We don't sit around our little bodies while we're asleep. A lot of people don't know that. Well, your soul will travel out and go places. You'll be hooked to that silver cord that everybody talks about. And I find that you can do that consciously, and that takes time to get to that.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. I've done many projections without learning how, just because there was a part of me, and it wasn't the conscious part of me, but there was a part of me that knew I could. So I remember when September 11 happened, and I just went, I want to go over and have a look and see what's happening. And I did. And I saw, so from a aspect, like a spiritual, astral perspective, I saw a whole lot of people guiding people that had died that didn't know that they were dead. You know, they were saying, come with me, come with me. And many of them were firemen, like dressed like a fireman, so that the people that had died sort of instantly, and they're out of their body, and they actually don't know they're out of the body. They see a fireman, and the fireman saying, come with me. And they go, oh, okay, because it's like an authority. And they kind of take them to another realm of the astral. Yeah. And they sort of, and then they acclimate to you're no longer in your body. And then they kind of come to that realization. So I saw all this happening, and I was kind of going, wow, it's all sorted. Like there's heaps of help here. Like there was lots of angels and lots of people that had died, that had specifically died for that reason, to help other people that were cross. And it was really interesting. And I never knew I could do that. I just did it. So it's so interesting. I was having this thought the other day that this stuff that we think we need to learn, our soul already knows how to do, because it's doing it all the time. So we just have to tap into that part of us that knows how to do it. Like, what if I knew how to do that, and just go there? Like, let me just do that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't start out with any. It wasn't like I just spontaneously came out of my body like some people do.
Yeah.
You know, I started out saying, you know what, the layout of your apartment or home where you live. So, kind of the key is we know what things are. We know where the armoire is. We know the desk and all that. And what the key is just visualize yourself coming out and touching that armoire, touching that desk, feeling what it feels like, and realizing everything's just vibrating energy anyway. Yeah. And it's kind of taking that energy that your subconscious, your soul, your divine self, and bringing it out of that physical density, and then going from there. So, we studied some quantum theory and physics, and kind of looking at some of the other guys. And I used to buy books back even before I got hurt, which is kind of funny. All at astral projection. I thought, wow, that looks cool. This is before I got hurt even. This back when I was like 20, 21. Wow. Never really read them, tried it a few times, visualizing that red ball above my head about 3 feet, trying to get to it and that kind of deal. The injury kind of led me to that. And that patience of, instead of the center of thinking about something, just do creative imagery. Picture a nice island somewhere. Picture, a better environment.
Create the world you want to live in. I don't think we understand the power of our ability to create the world we want to live in. Even when the physical circumstances aren't optimum, like yours, right? You can still create a world you want to live in, because you have the ability to think, to visualize, to feel, to be there, to create. You have your imagination. Yeah.
Well, plus it's energy. I mean, if we look at what Jesus even said in the Bible, about guard your thoughts, deeds, and actions carefully. Yeah. Because your thoughts are energy. I mean, when we think with our 5 senses, these are light photons coming into us. Yeah. And we process those and turn it into whatever information we want to perceive it as.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what would you say to people that are listening to this about what's happening in our world at the moment? What's your perspective of what we're going through?
I don't have any. I mean, I used to, read all the conspiracy theories growing up all the way back when. Now, is this a man-made virus that, we all of a sudden got struck with, and, it originated over there, and, they roped it off. We got all these people traveling. I mean, who knows? But some people follow that theory. So I kind of don't get too involved with that too much anymore.
But what about from a sort of spiritual, cosmic perspective? What is your thoughts about
I think what it's done is I think it's brought a lot of people together.
Right.
I think a lot of us were getting pretty much caught up in the Netflix and what's the latest good series to watch. And I think it has it's like a two-sided sword. One side is good that, you can see what the hell your kids are up to. Well, before you really had no idea, like when I grew up, like Okay, we're home for dinner at 7. We're going to go back out at 8.
That's a funny
So
perspective.
so things have changed dramatically. So it is good to keep, I think kids in a lot of ways, especially for studious, are better students than I was. But at the same time, I don't think it's not like an Indian way of life either. I mean, you got very structured soccer games, parents got to pick up this one, drop this one off here. Then the kids are all like down text messaging all day long. And, who really stops to really see what the world is and what the coronavirus means? A lot of it means that, we're stuck in our house.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's the almighty pause, or the pause on.
I think it's pulled families together in a lot of ways. People that weren't spending the time. When was the last time you had 3 children stuck with 2 parents in a house for a month up here? I mean, that just doesn't happen. These kids are out the door like I was, okay? So it's drawn families, I think, together. I think there's also been a lot of wise lessons learned from this.
Yeah.
In the sense that, it's not all about Netflix. We got people that are suffering or dying in the streets. I was talking to a friend yesterday who has a restaurant near me. He's closing down. He can't continue. And so the impact's going to be huge. Now, are these all lessons that people signed up for, the ones dying of the coronavirus or we got sick from it, as well as the ones that are being impacted financially as a result of this virus? So I think the complexity is, that the world's feeling the effects of coronavirus. So we all signed up for that lesson. I mean, it's just the way it is. And then, of course, some are taking a little bit of a harder lesson where realizing the financial impact. They've lost their business. They lost a loved one to this. And that's where the lesson's a little stronger, obviously, than it is just, I'm cooped up in my house for a month or 2.
Yeah.
But I think there's 2 things. Another thing that comes out of this is the fact that we're going to be a wiser planet as a result of this, realizing that these pandemics can sweep across the world in days or in hours based on the flight and how far it is. And that is something that, do we need to have big brick and mortar buildings blowing money on, housing a huge corporation? We could be doing what we're doing now on Zoom.
You can do it on Zoom. Are you obviously still sustaining yourself through money, working in the markets?
When I was in the hospital, they had me in, OT, occupational therapy, how to move my arm and try to move it and this and that and feed myself and all that. So they always asked everybody, what's your goal? Right off the bat, here you are, you're only in the hospital for 2 months, you're sitting in a wheelchair, this and that. Very young, fresh into that scene. And my goal, I said, man, I didn't even know about it at the time because I really didn't have a lot of financial goals. But I said my goal is to be financially independent.
Yeah.
And that was my focus,
right?
As opposed to feed myself tuna fish and watch and have it fall off a spoon or something.
So you've done that, and that allows you to do this work today.
Yeah, I'm not a multi-millionaire.
No, but you can sustain yourself. So the markets crashing are not really affecting you financially. So I'm on the phone to a girlfriend yesterday who works in the movie industry. Like, I've got a lot of friends in a very broad sort of spectrum of life. And I was just listening to her talk about how the movie industry has come to a crashing halt.
Right.
There's just so many, like, sports industries have come to a crashing halt. And she was talking to me about all her rich friends. Like, she's got a friend who is an art dealer, and he deals in like millions and millions and millions of dollars selling art to very rich people. That's come to a crashing. And I was just thinking as I was listening to her, the more entrenched you've been in the 3-dimensional money magic world,
Right.
the more you're suffering through this halt, this pause that we're going through, this crash. See, I'm not entrenched in that world. I work from home, I work on the internet, and I just don't have any money. So nothing's changed for me. But the more that you're invested in this world of investments and you own property and you've got businesses, and the more it's going to hurt you. And it's just fascinating what's happening on our world at the moment. It's just,
well, no, you're right. And it is across all industries.
All industries, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted to save enough to, not worry about finances. If I get to the point where I need to, charge a couple $100 to cure somebody's pain down the line or something, because I am licensed. But at this juncture, it's not really necessary. I've been pretty fortunate to kind of keep up on the markets, and I was out of the market February 5th before the whole thing fell apart. And I've done that in the past with other crashes. Like, I was out in 2008. I didn't get burned on that one. So But I don't take a lot of risk either. I'm not like one of these gamblers. So I don't want to work.
You're following your gut. So let me ask you, when you see a client, do they come to you physically or do you do it online? How does it work?
When you look at the people I hypnotized, they came from, like a Kevin Bacon story. This like 6 degrees, not quite 6 degrees removed, but I have this friend, my aunt,
So they come physically to you. This is what I'm getting at. They come to you
Oh, yeah.
physically, right? And so they lie down and you take them
Not
through a
all.
guided meditation. Or what, are you doing it online as well?
Well, I had my first exposure doing it to a executive producer out in Santa Monica about a month ago. But we did it over Zoom because he was interviewing me for his podcast. Right. He does a lot of podcasts now and stuff like that. And he said, Dave, could we do this, maybe on Zoom or something?
Okay.
And I thought, well, I don't know why that wouldn't work. I never really thought about it because I never got anybody approach me that's way out of town somewhere saying, hey, can I do one? So yeah, so what we did was, it was very interesting. And what you got to remember is all they hear is my voice anyway. Their eyes are closed. So it doesn't matter where they are. I could be anywhere. And they don't necessarily have to be physically here, which is kind of nice too. So I didn't really have to, I could just kind of like wing my questions without really, thinking too much about it.
Record it. Look, I know I do it on Zoom all the time with people.
Yeah, we did it for 3.5 hours. It was a long one.
Yeah.
And he covered 5 lives, and he got shot in his last one, and didn't know why he didn't like fear, and died in New York at the age of 23 before this life. So that's kind of a shocking thing to hear, you were murdered, before this life. And I've had other ones that, was committed suicide at age 15 before this life that they're in now. So that's kind of hard to hear. Another one was.
You're picking up on exactly of a friend of mine who came to me as a client. She became a friend, good friend, but I met her as a client. We were trying to figure out why she had moved away from her family, left her family in another country. And I took her through a past life, and she saw herself in the 60s as a teenager wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I'm like, what are you wearing? Jeans and a t-shirt. It's like, what year is this? We couldn't get the exact year, but it was obviously just before she was born. So it was quite recent. And she had done the same thing. She died of a drug overdose, I think. I don't know if it was an intentional, but there was this staunch independence in her that she was living out in this life. And even though she loved her family, she moved to another country to sort of continue that story of this independence. I'm here by myself. I'm carving out my life. I'm doing it my way without the family. And it was really interesting. Yeah, it was really interesting. It was like this continuation of the story.
Exactly. And I've seen a lot of that carry on with people who might have been in healthcare in this life. And, they were like a field nurse in Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
One recently was kind of cool. Her husband was like 1917, and she was living in Britain, and was in one of her field hospitals, and her husband went off and died. And she talked about her life up to the 60s and, going all the way to like 1960, and then bang, stayed up there for about 15, 20 years and came back down to this life. And, talked about all that. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Any last words of wisdom for people listening that you'd like to impart?
I think try to stay open-minded is number one. Secondly, is to realize everything is connected. Everything is just energy, whether it's us or our table or the walls. And that's a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. But I think if they realize that, they might be more than what they think they are, than their 5 senses and all that neat stuff, that, they can find the help is that I've had other people tell me, well, why do I need to know about this, my past lives? I need to concentrate on this one. And that's a valid question. But the reality is that the more we know about ourselves, whether it's in a past life, which adds to our toolbox of what we know, that can help us in making decisions in this life, which might be smarter. It might end a bad reoccurring cycle of a bad relationship where we could be going back to the same person that also reincarnates, and we yet have not gone through that lesson. Says, hey, it's not going to work. So we need to break certain cycles. And I think when we look at our forks in the road going forward, we can see a clearer path, especially when we visualize ourselves standing on the labyrinth and we know that's the end. How am I going to get through this in life and make the right decisions?
Well, let me ask you this. I know I'm trying to wrap it up now. I've got another question. The person that saw herself as, what did she call herself?
Messiah.
Yeah.
Josiah.
Josiah, following Jesus. How did that impact her life? How did knowing that impact her life today? Like, how did that change her?
Well, she's definitely a bit bigger believer. I mean, she didn't have a Christian background growing up. She didn't grow up in a family with any religious background at all. Their parents were more free spirited and, this kind of deal, kind of like, back in the 60s. Made her much more aware of, the roots that she might have had she had going way back when. And said it made her a deeply more spiritual person and wanted to get her more on the path of more exploration for herself and things like that. And I found that with most people I've hypnotized, especially if they have a past life regression that goes into like a meeting or they see their deceased relatives or, their spirit guide that, wow, I really know this person. They've been with me from day one and there's my counsel. And these three are always here, but here's a new one this time. So that's what you hear. And when they go back and play these recordings, then it just opens up a whole world way beyond what they've been most of them accustomed to. Some of them have had inklings like, I've always felt like maybe I lived in Egypt. I feel this attraction there. They're wise enough to know that. Or they say, I don't know why I like to draw, but I'm darn good at it, or music or whatever. And there's so many threads that lead back to past that, we bring these gifts down with us to help us in this life. We don't bring them all down.
Okay, so the answer to the question was it made her become more spiritually aware, and then it sent her on more of maybe an exploration to who she is as a spiritual being having a physical life rather than a physical being having a spiritual experience. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like the doorway in a sense. Some of these people have never been hypnotized, much like me when I was 26. I never did it, but I thought it sounded neat to do it. I just want to know. I don't know for a fact. That's some of the people we encounter. I've had others that might have had a regression 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wanted to try to get, most of them are all new.
Yeah. I had only a couple of past life regressions. One when I was very young and it didn't work. I just saw lots of colors swirling and didn't really go anywhere. And then one where I was like back in that time of Jesus. And like your client, I was not religious at all. In fact, I used to think that people that talked about Jesus were God botherers. And so my ego got a hold of that information and couldn't deal with it. And I just came out of it like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. And I just wanted to kind of come out of it because I couldn't cope with it. I couldn't cope with going back to, it was interesting when you were describing your client, when she took me through some, portals, she said, what do you see? I see sandals and dust. There's like a lot of feet. And she said, well, where are you? And I said, I don't know. She said, well, look up. And as I started to look up, because I was looking at all these feet, I just had an instant knowing of where I was. And it was just when he was walking to the crucifixion and all these people in the streets and everything like that. And I just went, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. There was a lot of fear. Anyway, it took me years to try and understand why I had seen that. And again, someone had taken me through a guided meditation. I'd seen something similar. And they said to me, my guides, just relax. You're not Mary Magdalene or Jesus or anything like that. Like your ego had got a hold of it. Like, who am I? Who am I? They said, you just made a commitment in that life to carry his message, and that's what you're doing.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, yeah,
Have you read about that? That'd be a nice book.
Hey?
That'd be a neat book, yeah.
That'd be a neat book. Yeah, and I think that I'm not alone in that. I think that many of us have made a commitment to, we've sat at the foot of a spiritual teacher, and in that life, be it him or other teachers, we've said, I'm going to carry this message. And we continue to do it life after life after life. And so that's what I'm doing with the shows, with my teachings.
Well, I'm sure you probably had other lives where you were giving advice in Greece or somewhere like Egypt, who knows? Maybe.
According to my guides, I've been carrying that message through every life. I've just been doing it very differently. Same intent, different life. So as a man in one life, as a priest in one life, as a, an atheist in another life, as a creative person in one life, as a doctor and a scientist in another life, it's the same exploration of love or consciousness, lived through many different lives and many different characters and many different circumstances. But the same intent, there's like a similar intent through all these different lives. So it's fascinating how...
You're a rare person to know why you're here. A lot of people don't know that ever. They never find that out. They go back home and go, wow, I should have tried harder. I didn't know that was all, like an illusion or different, that I was living another
Well,
life.
darling, now this is
And I
why
think,
you
I think
exist.
we try to help people explore that.
People like you and I exist to help people, remember why they're here. And everyone has a different intent to being physical, and we're not all here to be spiritual teachers. We're
Right.
here to experience contrast in its many forms and to understand the exploration of polarity and contrast. There's like just too many reasons than we can, infinite reasons to be here on earth. But at this time, I think that we're all here. We've all chosen to be here during this time of great transition. And all the people that I'm speaking to, that are listening to the shows, that are watching the shows, are all a part of the shift. And the shift has literally hit the fan. So as many people have said, many spiritual teachers, be the eye in the middle of the storm, be the calm, be the peace, be the love. And doesn't matter who you've been in a past life, just be love in this one.
Right. That's right. Good point. Yeah, I agree so wholeheartedly. And I think that, the work you're doing, Karen, is fantastic. And I think it helps, just plants a seed somewhere. And if they read a book, if they, learn a journey into, other possibilities beyond what's directly in front of with their five senses, I think it'd be a neat thing to do for a lot of people.
Well, Dave, it's been such a pleasure hearing your story and your exploration. Are you offering sessions? Like, can people contact you if they want to have sessions with you?
What you can do, Karen, is I don't mind. I'm working on another book already, and I have a couple of very interesting regressions I've done for some people. And if they want to reach out and tell me their story a little bit, and maybe what they do, what their occupation is, and maybe if they think they had some connection to some in the past, if they've done meditation, and if they do, if they think that they're here of purpose, they're star beings, they have that awakening. I mean, that'd be very interesting.
Beautiful. Well, your website is davidrippy.com. I'll have it under the YouTube, but for people listening, davidrippy.com, and you can see more on my website. You can see, his photograph and more about him. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, it's like, I won't let it go. I just had one quick thing. On the website is guided meditations. Like I said, there's 14 of them.
Beautiful.
And if you're suffering from insomnia, pain, whatever, go and try them out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Karen. It's great. And thanks. First time I've talked to somebody on Zoom from Australia. I appreciate that.
Fascinating show with Dave. We actually had more of a chat after I turned off the recording, as we do. Got a little bit more animated. I started sharing more of my stuff with him, and he's like, "Have you shared this on your podcast show, Your Past Lives?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't. only in the shows." But we were just saying that if you want to reach out to him and have a Zoom regression, he is up to negotiating with you for price. So I think that maybe if it's a full session, he'll charge a couple of $100. It's a lot less than normal hypnotherapy sessions, because he doesn't put himself out there as a practitioner at this stage. I think, as we discussed, he's certified and been doing it for 12 years, but it's not really the way he sustains himself financially. It's just his passion and his interest. Interesting guy, really interesting guy. The way he operates, he says he has a lot of helpers, but he's paralyzed from the neck down. I don't know if you noticed that when he breathes, like he talks, and then he has to take this deep breath in to get the air into his lungs. It's like really an effort. It's like force. He's used to it. It's the way he lives. But he forces the air in, and then he talks, and the air comes out. It's not easy being in his body. Let me tell you. Yeah, when he was young, he was drop dead gorgeous, handsome as all anything, athletic, handsome, intelligent. But as he said in the show, his mind power is so much stronger today than it was then. He probably thought about nothing but his muscles and sport when he was younger. How do I make money, have bigger muscles, and play good sport, win at my sporting games? But after the accident, and he was contemplating life, he started to think about a much bigger picture, which he is writing in all his books. But the latest book about Jesus, that sounds fascinating, really fascinating. The books are the transcripts of his hypnosis sessions. So there are like Dave says, client says, Dave said, client. You know, you've got to kind of read through transcripts. So they're not that easy to read, but if you don't mind that sort of thing, you know, they are. I actually get my computer to read me books, so it was a bit harder to listen to that, because I couldn't just gloss over that. When you're reading a book, you don't have to read Dave says, client says, but when you're listening to audio, you're listening to it, obviously. So yeah, they are the transcripts of his hypnosis. So it sort of runs a little bit slowly. It's a bit like watching Alma Weinman, you know, do her sessions on YouTube. It's a slow process. The story sort of unfolds slowly as the client just, you know, becomes aware of what they're experiencing. But yes, fascinating. Maybe you want to know who you were in a past life and what your soul plan is here. And I think it's valuable information. Not necessarily, I don't think it's completely imperative that we need to know who we are in our past lives. If it was, we would remember. I think that we're set up not to remember for good reason. I was telling him that, you know, my mother's reincarnated, and she's now a family member who said to me, I don't remember who I was in my past life. And I said to her, that's because you're not supposed to, because I was very much told by my guides that in this part of her life, she's not supposed to remember. And when she is, she'll find out, either through me or through another way, but she'll find out. But we live these lives not remembering for good reason until we need to know. I haven't learned a lot about many of my past lives. I've had snippets of many of them throughout my life from my either guidance or guided meditations, or even you know, from psychics telling me. And it's always like a little puzzle piece slots into place. Oh, that's why I've got this fascination for that, because I used to be an architect in a past life. That's why I'm so interested in architecture in this life, but I've never followed it, or home design or whatever. It's really interesting, all those little puzzle pieces that slot into place. But I hope you're all well and thriving and happy and joyous through these extraordinary times on Earth, and enjoying our new lockdown circumstances, and not too worried about it as we go through the great reset, this transformation, the great pause in human activity on Earth, the big pause. I have a girlfriend who, as I was talking about, works in the movie industry, and she's very into going to the gym and exercising, and of course gyms are shut and all that sort of thing. But she says her and her girlfriend bought a kayak, and they go down to the harbour, Sydney Harbour, and they get on the kayaks. They can keep far away from each other on the kayak and far away from other people, so it's legal at this point. And they get out on the harbour, and she said being out there on the harbour in the morning, the city is so still. There's no boats out there. There's no people on the shores. She said it's kind of eerie being out there on the harbour in the kayak, and everything's so quiet and still. And I said, yeah, it sounds amazing. I'd love to do that, to be out on the harbour at the moment with this stillness in our city at the moment, as this activity, this human activity has come to a screeching standstill. I went up to a big shopping centre yesterday to go to the supermarket, looking for toilet paper again. Didn't find any. Got some tissues. Anyway, I wanted to see this big, crazy shopping centre. I wanted to see that, you know, how still it was. And yeah, it's a bit like a ghost town. There were quite a few people milling around, you know, doing their supermarket shop, I suppose, but all the shops are shut except for food outlets. And the odd convenience store was open, but it's crazy how everything's shut. The Apple store is shut. I need my computer to get fixed, and that's shut. That's one of the busiest shops up there. Yeah, it's like a ghost town. It's really fascinating. Fascinating what's happening. The great 2020 pause, 2020 pause. Just stop all human activity. Well, the majority of it anyway. Just stop. Fascinating what's happening. Anyway, love you all. Who's coming up on the show? I don't know. Lots of people. I haven't got it in front of me. I think we've got some sound healing coming up in the inner sanctum. The beautiful Jane Elworthy, I think, is coming up. And I'm online every week at the moment. Ooh, I'm speaking to Aaron next week. Paul Selleck had to reschedule. He got stuck. He got evacuated from where he was the day that we were supposed to do the show. So we're trying to reschedule Paul. We were going to do it this Friday. I don't think that's going to happen. Might be next week, might be the week after. He'll come on at one stage. And Pia and Cullen are coming on, the Palladian Collective. Oh, lots of people coming up. So stay tuned for more shows. And if you want to meet me personally, reach out for a session yourself, meet your spirit guides, find out why you're here, what your purpose is. I can either take you to remember, or my guides will help you. And join the Inner Sanctum. We're online every week at the moment. Same price. It's not expensive. Our Australian dollar is like 60. It's almost half the American dollar at the moment, 60 cents. It's like crazy cheap for you Americans to have sessions with me or join the Inner Sanctum, because I have them all in Australian dollars. So the prices that you see online are in the Australian dollars, and it's crazy cheap for you to reach out to me at the moment. Same for me, but crazy cheap for you. Oh, I don't know why Australian dollar has plummeted. I've actually never seen it this low. But anyway, good reason to reach out if you're contemplating having a session and you haven't, and you're an American. Good time, because our dollar is so low. And I'll see you soon. Big love. Bye for now.